Salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Oh, very good. Okay, we're speaking of the goal. The goal. And when Krishna has been teaching yoga, the practice of yoga for some time, and for the last few mornings now at least, we've been discussing the goal of yoga, or yoga itself. So we'll continue in the vein. 519. When you see the stainless unity of God, Brahman, everywhere, you become established in Brahman and rise above the constant changes of this world. Let me share. Traditionally, for English study, we'll read the word-by-word translations. And Swami Shivananda's translation and commentary has the word-by-word. This is the order of the Sanskrit that's being translated. Number 19. Here, even by them, is conquered rebirth or creation, of whom in equality established mind, spotless indeed, equal, Brahman, therefore in Brahman they are established. So that's a literal translation, which might be helpful. You can tell that, and I'm no Sanskrit scholar, but we can tell that that the construction of the Sanskrit language is quite a bit different than the English construction.
All Indian languages, same construction.
Thank you. And if we listen carefully, that is, if we listen deeply, we'll catch it. Also, we'll have some understanding of the construction, and that can be helpful. Okay, let's read the next. When you become established in the Absolute, your understanding is without doubt. There are no delusions. Those who have realized Brahman are not excited by pleasures, nor do they suffer from pain. And one more, we'll just read the commentary here. And we'll pick up 20 and 21, both the commentaries related to both. So a little different translation. And you can see when we get the order, we can see it leaves room for translations that are a little bit different. Swami Satchidananda's translation is very precise, but it's not exact. He catches the meaning of it very, very well and states it in a way that to the Western mind, it's more directly relatable often. But of course, if we really want to study the Geeta, then it's good to have and take some time with the word by word also, and look at the more classical translations. This is amazingly helpful, though, for the Western jaded mind. We're very firm in the way we see things in the West, which is an error. So we're very firm in our mistake, taking it to be the truth. And we've become very hardened in it in the West. Not very little humility in the West. Right? Great humility in India. So this is very helpful to help us to catch it at a certain level and to start breaking down the barriers. Okay, 2021. Resting in Brahman with steady intellect and undiluted, The knower of Brahman neither rejoiceth on obtaining what is pleasant, nor grieveth on obtaining what is unpleasant. With the self unattached to external contacts, he finds happiness in the self. With the self engaged in union with Brahman, he attains to endless happiness. How many have been seeking that? Yeah, right? There you go. So that's the clue. What's been sought for countless births exists where? In Brahman, in one's deepest self. There's a concept here, just to take a moment with it in 19, in Shloka 19. It says, the one who sees Brahman everywhere unites with Brahman, becomes himself, herself, Brahman. This speaks to the power of this mind, or the power of these thoughts. Because whatever we meditate upon, we come into a kind of union with it. If we are always thinking about what we need and that we should take it in order to have it, we become a thief. Right? So, first we become it in our mind, and then we become it in the physical realm. But you don't know anything other than the thief at that point. The experience is inside, outside, thief. Right? That indicates a great power in thought, a great power that exists underlying the thought, and the great power of thought itself. Whatever we contemplate upon in a single-pointed way, our experience is that we come into union with it. I know people in the native tradition that meditate with trees, right? So they bring their awareness to the tree awareness, and they sit with that tree for hours and hours and days, and after some time, they become one with the tree awareness. Isn't that surprising? Now, how does that happen? Well, certainly it indicates that there's no separation, actually, between us and that tree. If you were separate, how could you come into union with something inside? And you couldn't. Yeah. It would remain outside. Right? Yeah. So, in order to do it, it has to be inside. That's the point that we miss. And so here, if one brings one's thoughts, one's words, one's actions, and into alignment with the virtues, and only sees Brahman everywhere, then it's just simply stating one is Brahman already. So one becomes Brahman. One comes into union with Brahman. If one sees that font of peace everywhere, one becomes peaceful. Peace itself. One comes into union with. Okay. If one sees the source of love everywhere, the same. Brahman. Okay, and then these next two. Resting in Brahman with steady intellect and undiluted, the knower of Brahman neither rejoiceth on obtaining what is pleasant, nor grieveth on obtaining what is unpleasant. With the self unattached to external contact, he finds happiness in the self. With the self engaged in union with Brahman, he attains to endless happiness. Here's the commentary. The knowledge outlined in the preceding verses is a double-edged sword. The clever, cunning, and pleasure-seeking ego often uses it in pursuit of its own revelry in the darkness of ignorance. Hence the ancient sages had wisely withheld this knowledge from the unclean hands of the disciplined soul, of the undisciplined soul, rather. Krishna, while throwing the gates of knowledge open to all, exposes the other edge of the sword clearly. It is easy to say God's will or I see God in all when the mind and senses are pampered and the ego is inflated. It does not demand spiritual heroism to demonstrate brave equanimity when life is smooth or fortune is smiling. But just as night follows day, their counterparts follow them. What are the counterparts of the smooth sailing and fortune smiling? What are the counterparts of them?
Negative situation.
Rough seas and fortune not to be found. Right?
Yeah.
Does one beget the other?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah, always, every time. It's only blindness that says, oh, it's going to stay wonderful. It'll always be good like this. Mm-hmm. It's only tamas that says that. It's ignorance that says that. Because of course it's not true. Don't you have the proof?
Oh, yeah.
Also, what we call spiritual bypassing. Also, what we call spiritual bypassing. If you just think good thoughts, if you think positively, only good things will happen to you. You'll have plenty of money. You'll have all the friends you want. You'll have wonderful experiences. Everyone will love you. It's not so. But just as night follows day, their counterparts follow them. Then is the time to demonstrate true equilibrium of mind. So when there's no fortune, when the bank is calling in the note, when the IRS is knocking at the door, when COVID has come and touched the body, when your employer has fired you, then is the time to demonstrate true equilibrium of mind. If you can truly be indifferent to misfortune, dishonor, failure, and pain, you are a yogi. And then he describes the sadhana. Swamiji says this is possible by a twofold sadhana. First is detach the mind from external contacts. Reduce the self, little s self, to zero. Reduce your wants to nothing. That's peace pilgrim. That's the preparation for peace, preparation for awakening. So do a needs analysis, real needs analysis. And don't want for anything that you don't really actually need.
It's really hard for an artist. Like if you go to...
It's hard for everyone.
Yeah. You
Hard
go
for
to an
everyone.
art store, it's hard not to want everything.
But so what if... So what if it's hard? Life is easy?
Be happy to, yeah.
Life is easy?
Yeah.
There's an idea of an easy life. How does that work?
Simplicity.
Which isn't that easy. I moved to the middle of nowhere and lived off the grid, and it was a hard life.
It was a hard
It
life.
wasn't a simple life.
Oh, you're funny, dude. However we go, life is hard. It's not easy. So that's one of those, the first sutra in the second book of Raja Yoga, Patanjali Yoga Sutras. It says the sadhana is the acceptance of the pain up front, doing what is hard in order to have freedom.
Yeah, we look like a Shaolin temple. They're ahead of the pain all the time because they get in it.
Yeah. So it's a willingness to accept it. It's not necessarily the self-flagellation that people might think that it is.
Yeah.
Because it has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It has a purpose. If one understands that wisdom is only wrapped in a veil, the wisdom is right here, right now. And the reason that I'm not aware of it at all times is because it's veiled to me. And if I understand the nature of the veil, that the nature of the veil is the mind which is tossed about by the sense objects and tossed about by the expectation of this or that, right? I expect a good day. So Fido said something day before yesterday when I had the opportunity to take her in. And she said something about it being cold. And Swami said, "My dear, the best advice is to love whatever the weather is." Because otherwise there's the longing, and where there's the longing, there's dissatisfaction. And where there's dissatisfaction, there's no peace. Right? So we want to accept whatever's on offer. Whatever's on offer. Pain's on offer. Fine, this is pain. After a while, it'll pass. Pleasure's on offer. Okay, fine, this is pleasure. After a while, it will pass. Right? So peace, wisdom is only hidden by the buffeting and veiling of the mind. That's it. So if we understand that, then we'll understand that the only issue we're dealing with is this mind being tossed about, right? Or being veiled, being dark. And so if that's all I'm dealing with, then will I be willing to withstand that which is painful in order to have equanimity? Right? Oh. So that's sadhana. Reduce the self, the little s self, to zero. In your own heart, experience the bliss of God. So that's the twofold. That's the twofold. Is on the outer, this little self, this ego self that's wanting, needing, saying, do this, do that. Reduce it to zero. Cultivate sattva, right? And at the same time, bring your awareness to the center, to that highest. And then he has a second step, which is expand. Know that the self is the all-pervading Brahman. Realize you are the all. Enjoy the perennial bliss. So it is a kind of withdrawing first, but understand that what we're doing is detach, attach. We're detaching ourselves from the expectations and the personal desires and wants that will cause the buffeting, right? So we're doing that as a step, and we're learning to hold on to what's real instead of what's temporal. Right? We're learning to experience the bliss of God, or the bliss of the self. And once we've made good progress in that, we begin to expand, we reach out. What does that mean? We see the one self in all. And we love all, and we serve all. We love all and we serve all. Having found what's in each of us, we expand. We expand. So he says, know that the self is the all-pervading Brahman. Realize you are the all. Enjoy the perennial bliss. He says, in one, the external disturbing elements do not even touch you. And in two, so in the first, right, this withdrawal and then touching the center, In 1, the external disturbing elements do not even touch you. And in 2, you identify yourself with them too. You are the robber and you are the robbed. You have only changed the lost object from one hand to the other, and you will ever be happy. However, unless this sadhana springs from or is at least accompanied by self-knowledge, it will lead either to hypocrisy or worse, to repression of emotion. I'll just read the next one and then see if we have any questions or comments. 22. The enjoyments that are born of contacts. Does that make sense? The sense pleasures. Sorry?
The sense.
Yeah. So the enjoyments, I enjoy this or that, right? I enjoy when the weather is when the temperature is 72 degrees and the sun is shining and I can hear the waves of the ocean. I enjoy that. So the enjoyments that are born of contacts are only wombs of pain, for they have a beginning and an end. Does that resonate? Wombs of pain. Do you understand the womb? The birthplace of pain. Why?
Because it's not always that way.
Because it's not always that way. So as long as you have the expectation for that, most of the time you won't have that, and therefore pain. Where's the pain? Is it because you don't have that?
Because
you're attached.
you were expecting.
Yeah, because the mind is a disaster. It's torturing you, right? The enjoyments that are born of the context are only wombs of pain, for they have a beginning and an end. O Arjuna, the wise do not rejoice in them. It's enjoyments. That sutra we'll come back to in the morning, but that sutra in and of itself is the great teaching. As long as Raga Dvesha holds sway within us, and as long as we're honoring it, worshiping it, following it, that is the feeling that I want this and I don't want that. I want you in my life, but I don't want him in my life. And as long as that feeling is here, and as long as we're giving it our prana and our awareness, then there's nothing but suffering for us. So the wise, the ones who see through, do not rejoice in them. Don't pursue them. Don't have any interest in them. Although the most amazing thing is that as long as there's this feeling that I am this body, as long as there's this ego sense, as long as the ego sense exists, then pleasure and pain will exist. Pleasure and pain will exist. So he's not speaking of the ability to completely eliminate the experiences of pleasure and pain. He's saying, endure them, see through them, see what's on the other side, right? See that as long as we're beholden to them, as long as we're making our decisions based upon what's pleasurable and what's painful, instead of choosing based upon what's righteous or what's beneficial, then the cycle of suffering has to continue. So he's extolling us, Lord Krishna, is to be brave, to see clearly enough what's being shared, to see the veracity in it, the truth of it, and be brave. And be willing to accept the pain in order to engage in what's righteous or what's beneficial, right? What's selfless and what's beneficial. And sadhana will have to look like this. Yes, there comes a time when it's natural and when there isn't an interest in going after that which is painful, or that which is pleasurable, rather. And there's not an interest in running away from that which is painful. At some point, when the self is truly in charge, capital S self is truly in charge. But in the meantime, for sadhaka, we're facing choices. And this is where Lord Krishna is speaking to us. We're Arjuna here. And he's telling us, be brave. Understand what I'm sharing with you. Understand that these experiences of pain and the experiences of pleasure, they will both come. One will follow the other. For the entire cycle of this birth, one will follow the other. And as long as we allow ourselves to go for one and avoid the other, and put that as a priority over our duty, over selfless action, over the Dharma, as long as we do that, then there's just death to death for us. There's just suffering for us. But that we can break out of it through bravery and through following the guidance that's being offered, right? But we have to see it. We have to actually be able to see it. And it's the only way to do it. Otherwise, the motivation of the body will continue to be to recoil from what is painful. It will. Right? Even Arjuna, who's quite intelligent and gifted when we began Bhagavad Gita, right? Very intelligent, very gifted, very much a dharmic character, but still that recoil happened in the body and the mind. That's the point of it. And so Lord Krishna is educating here, and we'll have to consciously, intentionally be willing to accept the pleasure without craving it, and accept the pain without running away. And that leads to this stainless state. Okay. Questions or comments? Brad? Oh. Mataji, would you add anything?
So, Swami, the challenges will be coming always.
Yes.
So that is like a one up and down will go on and on. The curves will come and go. But still we have to go through it, and then with the same equanimity.
Yes. Peace Pilgram, and we'll set up a time to do this. How many of us have seen the chart that Peace Pilgram draws that shows the spiritual awakening from the mundane life to the life in God? She actually shows a chart that she speaks to about what it looks like experientially. How many have seen that? Okay.
Is it in the movie?
Long time back.
You'll see it behind her, and she talks about it very briefly in the documentary. You'll see it behind her. It's a chart that's left to right time. So early, later, and up and down is experiential. So like a bliss meter. Or freedom meter. Okay. So maybe tomorrow morning we'll bring that out.
I just had to, isn't every moment we're kind of making that decision, like between pleasure and pain, almost like, oh, I'll wear this today. This is how I'll sit on this. Like every little thing is
It seems that way. Yeah.
I know there's the bigger sense objects.
Yeah, Swami has that too,
You
as you
know.
can tell. What am I going to wear today?
But even you sit on a cushion. I mean, you could sit on the floor. I'm just saying you can take it down to every little.
Yeah, but who's making the choices? The senses themselves, nature itself will still make choices, whether you're overseeing and getting wrapped up in them or not. Mm-hmm. In other words, there's a nature to this person. Mm-hmm. The person will operate just fine without your involvement. Because you're not the person. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you a little story. Just a fun one. 3 years ago, something like that. I was, the walking was complete, and I was still driving around in Prema at that point, going from place to place. And I'd stopped in Tucson. Erica's mother, Michelle, is there. And when I would go to Tucson, I would meet with a small group there, and she would invite me, still an open invitation, to come to her place and to park Prema there. And then she has a little, her place near the university, and it has a little courtyard area. And I would park there off the street, be able to plug Prema in, and then come in and go out as needed. And I'd stay there for a couple of days, and we'd have some meetings and like that. And lovely gathering. And she had a washer and dryer there, and so I was able to wash and dry the clothes. And these are all choices too, yeah. But I don't get so wrapped up in them. They're just natural. When the clothes are dirty and there's a washing machine there, what to do? Why is it even a choice? Right. It's just natural, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's nothing really. It's just the flow of life. So I was walking in and out, and on the way to the entry of the house, to the entryway, was a tree, an oak, with a branch. Let's see, this body's 6'1", and the branch is 5'10". So right here. So I walked in and hit it. And what happens? Nature is bumping into nature. So this body right here hits the tree. And I just laugh and I observe it very carefully. And later on, I don't know, a couple hours later, something like that, it happens again, and I laugh. And the third time, I see what happens. I see the body slow down as it starts to get, and I see that the awareness of that tree comes, and I see the body duck. And it had learned. And so nature adapts to nature. It really didn't need my involvement. I was just laughing. Because it wasn't a big deal. It's pain, but it's fleeting pain. It's not a big deal. And then it adjusted. It adjusts to changing circumstances, right? When the clothes are to be washed, when the kids are to be taken to school, all that stuff, the person will do them. The observer need not get so wrapped up in it. The observer need not be disturbed at all about what happens. One day the kids have a cold, another day the kids don't have a cold and they're running around. One day they're with their crayons writing on the sofa. Another day they're sitting so angelically. Why is that going to bother me one way or the other? It's just nature playing out. But there's a force underlying all of this, which is the cause of all of it, which is the one reality of all of it, which is of the nature of Satchidananda, existence absolute, knowledge absolute, bliss absolute. As long as we get in touch with that force and take our reality from that force, which is really what our reality is coming from, and we take our identity from the real instead of the ephemeral, instead of the ever-changing, instead of the wants and desires of this ego, if we meditate upon it, if we reflect upon it, if we keep our awareness with it all the time, and if we see it inside of us and outside of us, then bliss is here. Happiness is here. Joy is here. Joy even when people are suffering. We don't laugh at their suffering. Never do that. But joy is independent of the experience, you see. Joy is independent of the experience. There will be sad experiences. There will be other kinds of experiences. But that joy, which is your own self, is undisturbed by any of that. It remains regardless of what you're experiencing. It's not like you're laughing at the people that are suffering. You're there with your hands there, and you're doing whatever you can. You're taking them to the hospital. You're picking them up on the street. You're picking up their books for them. You're doing whatever, and you're, of course, experiencing their sadness. That sadness is temporal. Everything here, it comes and goes. But in the center, this bliss is undisturbed. This wholeness, this fullness, this completion is undisturbed. There's no idea about it being incomplete, no idea about missing something, no idea about needing something. There's the ability to participate in what's happening without being caught up in it, without taking it as an independent reality. It's not an independent reality. This is a grand play. It's a grand play. And within the play, there are the opportunities for the players to awaken and to know themselves. And this is certainly worthy effort to support. But there's not a need to take ourselves to be this body in order to utilize it. There's not a need for us to have a certain type of experience in order to be joyous.
I have a question around that.
Yes, dear.
When you talk about others suffering, I have found, like, if you're in a situation and other people around you are very disturbed by what's going on, but you're starting to get like, I'm calm.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're upset. Why aren't you disturbed by this too?
I understand. Well, and if you can explain a little bit, you can say, well, I'm thinking of God, and when I think of God, I'm not disturbed. But I'm here with you. And understand that comment will come, but the fact that you're at peace, it's pervasive. And it supports the movement of peace for everyone there. And those experiences for the people who aren't at peace, those are memorable experiences. And a reflection later will come back to them. Oh my God, so-and-so in this situation, I was freaking out, but she was at peace. And when I asked her why, she said the most amazing thing. She said, I'm thinking of God, and when I think of God, I'm at peace. Maybe I should do that. It's remarkable. When something's happening and everybody's freaking out, it's not remarkable that everybody's freaking out. But if one person is not, that's remarkable. That's memorable. That's helpful. Because that helps us, as those who are still caught up and still freaking out, it helps us to recognize when we do our reflection, but maybe that's not the way it has to be. Maybe there really is something higher than this. Right? Oh, Jaimon. Okay. So let's close with the final prayers in Arati, page 174. Jai Gurudev. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukneva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyama Mritata Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Makashi Dukhabhak Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On behalf of Sakura Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Okay, let's stand for Arati. The short Arati, please, sorry.